You are sitting comfortably in a room that feels familiar. Perhaps you are reading a book, staring at a screen, or simply resting your eyes for a moment of quiet reflection. The world around you is settled. The hum of the refrigerator is a distant drone. The traffic outside is a muffled rhythm. There is nothing demanding your immediate attention, no threat on the horizon, and no sudden noise to startle you. You are completely at peace. And then, without any warning, it happens. A sound emerges, not from the room, but from within you. It is a high-pitched tone, thin and piercing, like a broadcast frequency or the resonance of a crystal glass being rubbed. It might be in your left ear, or perhaps your right. It swells in volume for a brief, intense moment, dominating your awareness, effectively muting the ambient sounds of the room. You freeze. Your eyes might widen slightly as you instinctively scan your environment, looking for the electronic device that must be malfunctioning. But deep down, you know the sound isn't coming from the electronics. It isn't coming from the street. It is a phantom frequency, singing exclusively to you. And then, just as mysteriously as it arrived, it begins to fade. The sharp pierce softens, retreats into the background, and dissolves back into silence, leaving you in the exact same position you were in 10 seconds ago, but with a lingering sense of question. What was that? It is a universal human experience, yet it feels intensely personal every time it occurs. In the seconds following that fleeting tone, the mind races through a checklist of possibilities. Was that tinnitus? Did my hearing just sustain damage? Was it a glitch in my biology, a misfire of a tired nerve? Or, as many people find themselves wondering in the quiet privacy of their own thoughts, was that a signal? We immediately search for meaning because the experience defies the logic of our physical reality. In our standard understanding of the world, sound is a reaction. A hammer hits a nail and we hear a bang. A bird sings and we hear a melody, cause and effect. But this sound has no external cause. It is an effect without a visible trigger. This creates a subtle dissonance in the mind, a momentary gap in our understanding of how we relate to our bodies. It happens to millions of people. It happens to musicians with perfect pitch and to people who struggle to hear conversation in a crowded room. It happens to the young and the old. It happens in moments of high stress, but perhaps even more frequently, it happens in moments of profound relaxation. The ubiquity of the experience suggests that this is not an error in the code of human biology, but a feature of it. It suggests that the auditory system is far more than just a passive microphone waiting for sound waves to enter the ear canal. It is an active, dynamic, and sometimes generative system. When the silence of a room is broken by a sound that no one else can hear, we are confronted with the complexity of our own perception. We are reminded that what we hear is not always a direct translation of the world around us, but a construction created by the brain. This creates a compelling mystery. Why does the brain suddenly decide to produce a sound when nothing in the environment is making one? To answer this, we must look first at the intricate, delicate machinery of the ear itself and the electric language of the brain that interprets it. To understand the sudden onset of this ringing, we must first appreciate the sheer complexity of the biological equipment you possess. Your hearing is not merely a mechanical process, it is a bioelectric miracle. Sound waves travel through the air, entering the ear canal and vibrating the eardrum. These vibrations are passed through 3 tiny bones, the smallest in the human body, into the fluid-filled spiral of the cochlea. Inside this spiral lie thousands of microscopic hair cells. These are not hair in the traditional sense, but sensitive biological antennae that sway with the movement of the fluid. When they bend, they trigger an electrical impulse that shoots up the auditory nerve to the brain. This is the textbook explanation. However, what is often left out is that this system is alive. It is not a static piece of hardware. These hair cells are constantly working, constantly maintaining their chemical balance, and constantly interacting with the nervous system. The sudden, fleeting ring you experience, often lasting only a few seconds or up to a minute, is distinct from chronic tinnitus. Chronic tinnitus is a persistent condition, a constant companion that can signal damage or long-term neurological changes. But the fleeting ring, the one that visits you for a moment and then leaves, is known in clinical terms as transient ear noise, or spontaneous, brief, unilateral tapering tinnitus. While the name is technical, the mechanism is fascinatingly chaotic. One prevailing theory suggests that this sound is the auditory equivalent of a muscle twitch. Just as your eyelid might flutter involuntarily when you are tired, or a muscle in your leg might jump as you fall asleep, the microscopic hair cells in the cochlea can occasionally misfire. They can become spontaneously active without any sound wave pushing them. When a cluster of these cells becomes excited and fires an electrical signal simultaneously, the auditory nerve carries that message to the brain. The brain, doing its job perfectly, interprets this electrical spike as a sound. Because the cells are often specific to a certain frequency, you hear a very specific, pure tone. This is a phenomenon of spontaneous neural activity. The auditory pathway is never truly silent. Even in a soundproof room, there is a baseline of electrical noise within the nervous system. The brain is usually an expert at filtering this internal noise out, categorizing it as background and preventing it from reaching your conscious awareness. It is similar to how you do not constantly feel the sensation of your clothes against your skin or see the tip of your own nose. The brain edits the sensory data to keep your focus on what matters. However, this filtration system is dynamic. It adjusts. Imagine a radio receiver scanning for a signal. If the signal is weak, the radio might turn up its own internal gain, its sensitivity, to try and catch it. In doing so, it picks up static. In moments of quiet or sudden shifts in attention, your auditory cortex may effectively turn up the volume on the incoming signals from the ear. If a random cluster of nerves fires during this period of high sensitivity, the signal bursts through the filter and registers as a loud, piercing ring. There is also the factor of pressure. The ear is extremely sensitive to changes in blood flow and pressure. The cochlea is fed by tiny arteries. A sudden microscopic shift in blood flow, a change in head position, or even a subtle shift in jaw tension can alter the pressure environment within the inner ear. This micro shift can stimulate the hair cells mechanically, tricking them into thinking a sound wave has arrived. The nervous system reacts instantly, processing this pressure change as a frequency. We must also consider the role of the efferent nervous system. Usually, we think of signals going from the ear to the brain, but there are substantial pathways going from the brain back down to the ear. The brain can actually tune the ear, tightening or loosening the sensitivity of the hair cells. This creates a feedback loop. Sometimes the sudden ring is the sound of the brain calibrating the ear. It is a test tone. The system is checking its own integrity, sending a signal down and receiving one back to ensure the pathway is clear. This perspective shifts the narrative from one of damage to one of function. The fleeting ring is not necessarily a sign that the ear is breaking. It can be a sign that the ear is working. It is a sign that the connection between the hardware of the ear and the software of the brain is active. The rapid fading of the sound is the brain's gain control kicking in. The brain realizes, wait, there's no external object making this sound, and it swiftly dampens the signal, suppressing the noise and returning you to the true ambient silence of the room. It is a self-correcting glitch, a momentary lapse in the filter that is immediately recognized and rectified by your neural networks. While chronic ringing should always be evaluated by a medical professional, these brief phantom visits are generally considered normal physiological events, little sparks of electricity in a highly charged system. They are reminders that your perception of reality is generated by a living, breathing biological machine that is constantly humming with energy, even when the world around you is perfectly still. If this already explains something you've experienced before, hit like so this reaches others who've had the same moment and quietly wondered what it meant. Beyond the mechanics of hair cells and blood pressure, we must look at the brain as a sophisticated prediction engine. The brain does not simply passively receive the world, it actively predicts what it is about to experience. It is constantly monitoring the body's internal state and the external environment to ensure survival. This monitoring system runs deeply in the subconscious, operating far below the level of your active thoughts. It scans for threats, for changes, and for anomalies. In this context, the sudden ringing in your ear can be viewed as a system notification. Think of your nervous system like a complex security grid or a high-performance computer. Computers sometimes run background diagnostic checks. They test the circuits to ensure that if an alert needs to be sent, the pathway is clear. The nervous system does something remarkably similar. It is always recalibrating. When you transition from a noisy environment to a quiet one, or when your mental state shifts from high-alert stress to sudden relaxation, the brain has to adjust its sensory baselines. It has to recalibrate what silence sounds like. During this recalibration, the threshold for what constitutes a sound is lowered. The gain is turned up. In this sensitive state, the internal electrical hum of the auditory nerve can briefly cross the threshold into awareness. The ring is the sound of your sensory system resetting itself. Consider the metaphor of a microphone on a stage. If the microphone is turned on but no one is speaking, and the sound engineer pushes the fader up too high, you get a squeal of feedback. The system is too sensitive for the amount of input it is receiving. Your nervous system acts like that sound engineer. It pushes the fader up to hear any potential danger in the silence. The resulting ring is a biofeedback loop, a momentary signal that the system is live, active, and listening. This is often why the ringing feels like an alert. It grabs your attention forcefully. It pulls you out of your daydream or your book and forces you to be present. From an evolutionary standpoint, this makes sense. A sudden change in auditory perception forces the organism, you, to freeze and listen. Even though the sound is internal, the reaction it provokes is a survival check. You stop, you look, you listen, you confirm safety. The signal fades, the diagnostic is complete. This perspective helps to ground the experience. It removes the fear that something is wrong and replaces it with the understanding that something is checking in. Your body is a vessel of immense intelligence, constantly communicating with itself. Most of this communication happens in the dark, silent language of chemical exchanges and synaptic firings. But occasionally the volume spills over. Occasionally the internal dialogue of your biology becomes loud enough for you to hear. The ring is a brief eavesdropping session on the constant conversation happening between your ear and your brain. The environment and your state of mind play a pivotal role in these experiences. Notice when the ringing usually occurs. It rarely happens when you are running for a bus, arguing in a meeting, or dancing at a concert. It almost always arrives in the spaces between the noise. It finds you in the quiet moments, late at night, early in the morning, or during a mid-afternoon pause. This is not a coincidence. This is a matter of signal-to-noise ratio. The signal, that spontaneous neural firing, is likely happening at other times too. However, when the world is loud, the external noise masks the internal glitch. Your brain prioritizes the conversation you are having or the traffic you are navigating. The internal signal is drowned out by the external data. It is only when the external world falls silent that the internal world becomes audible. This explains why the experience is so common among those who meditate, those who spend time in nature, or those who are simply introspective. When you quiet the mind and the environment, you remove the blanket of noise that usually covers the subtle activities of your nervous system. You are effectively lowering the water level in the river, revealing the rocks and stones that were always there at the bottom. Furthermore, emotional states like stress, anxiety, or fatigue can heighten the frequency of these episodes. When you are tired, the brain's inhibitory controls, the filters that keep internal noise quiet, become less efficient. A tired brain is a noisy brain. It struggles to dampen the spontaneous signals. Similarly, when you are stressed, your body is in a state of hyper-arousal. Your senses are sharpened. Your pupils dilate, your muscles tense, and your hearing becomes acute. In this heightened state, you are primed to detect any signal, and the brain is more likely to interpret a random neural spark as a significant sound. There is a gentle irony here. The ringing often feels intrusive, yet it requires a certain level of calm or sensitivity to be perceived at all. It is a paradox of awareness. The more you pay attention to the silence, the more likely you are to hear the sounds that live within it. This does not mean you are imagining it. The sound is real in the sense that your auditory cortex is lighting up, but your awareness is the spotlight that illuminates it. Without that quiet awareness, the signal would pass in the dark, unnoticed and unremembered. While neuroscience offers us the how, humans have always searched for the why. For thousands of years, long before we knew about hair cells and auditory cortices, people experienced this sudden, high-pitched resonance. Lacking the language of biology, they used the language of the spirit. They built frameworks of meaning to explain the invisible touch of sound. In many spiritual traditions and metaphysical schools of thought, a sudden ring in the ear is rarely dismissed as mere noise. It is viewed as a sign of energetic sensitivity. Just as a dog can hear a whistle that a human cannot, many traditions suggest that there are frequencies of existence that sit just outside our normal perception. When the ear rings, it is interpreted as a moment where the veil thins, a moment where one becomes sensitive to a frequency usually filtered out by the density of daily life. Some interpretations view the ringing as a download, a packet of intuitive information or energetic recalibration being received by the body's energy field. The high pitch is often associated with higher frequencies of consciousness, a call to pay attention to one's thoughts in that precise moment. It is seen as a nudge from the universe or a signal from a higher aspect of the self. The idea is that the body is an antenna, and occasionally it picks up a broadcast that creates a resonance in the physical receiver, the ear. Others view it as a confirmation signal. If you are thinking about a difficult decision or pondering a significant life change and the ear suddenly rings, some lore suggests this is a mark of truth, a physical punctuation mark on a mental thought. It is seen as the intuition bypassing the logical mind and signaling directly through the senses. We do not need to scientifically validate these claims to appreciate their beauty or their utility. Whether one believes in energetic shifts or not, the function of the belief is powerful. It transforms a moment of potential annoyance or confusion into a moment of mindfulness. Instead of thinking, "my ear is broken," the spiritual perspective invites you to think, "I am listening." It invites you to pause and check in with your intuition. It reframes a biological glitch as a poetic signal. It suggests that perhaps in that moment of silence, you are tuning into something subtle. Even if we stay strictly within the realm of psychology, this interpretation serves a purpose. It acts as a pattern interrupt. The ring breaks your train of thought. If you assign meaning to it, viewing it as a call to be present, you inevitably become more present. You stop worrying about the future or regretting the past, and you focus entirely on the sensation of the here and now. In this way, even if the cause is purely mechanical, the result can be profoundly spiritual. It brings you back to the center. It reminds you that you are a sensitive being, capable of perceiving subtleties that are easily missed.
When we weave these threads together, the biological, the psychological, and the spiritual, we arrive at a holistic understanding of the experience. We stop seeing the ringing as a defect and start seeing it as a quirk of a highly sophisticated system. Your ears are not malfunctioning, they are simply alive. Your mind is not imagining things, it is interpreting internal data with heightened sensitivity. Your nervous system is complex, sensitive, and constantly adjusting to the world around you. This is a reminder of how much is happening below the surface of your conscious mind. You are a vast ocean of electrical signals, chemical reactions, and intuitive perceptions. Navigating this ocean requires a certain level of mental clarity and calm. When strange sensations arise, the ability to remain grounded, to observe without fear, is a superpower. To help you cultivate this kind of grounded awareness, I've written a free ebook titled The Magic of Affirmations. It is not just about positive thinking. It is a practical guide to working with your subconscious mind. It explores how to calm internal signals, how to direct your focus, and how to build stronger mental clarity when unusual sensations or intrusive thoughts appear. It is designed to help you become the master of your own internal environment. You can find it linked in the description below. As you move forward, paying attention to the silence as much as the noise, I want to leave you with a question to reflect on. The next time this happens to you, don't just dismiss it. Observe the context. When your ears suddenly ring, what is happening around you in that moment? Is it absolute silence, a moment of hidden stress, or a state of deep focus? Listen to the answer. It might tell you more about your state of being than the sound itself.